The sirens had stopped, but the river still sounded like tearing cloth. Morning held Willow Bend like a bruise. Mud on the porches. Gasoline in the air. The river had climbed into our streets and sat there, cold and sure of itself. Through my window I saw her, a dog, chest deep, planted like a fence post. She shook but she didn't move. On a broken door beside her lay 4 tiny shapes. Puppies. The door spun and bumped in the current. Each time it drifted, she pressed it back with her shoulder. I told myself to look away. I couldn't. I had not gone near the river since it took my boy. Years ago. Different storm. Same sound in his lungs. Since then I lived on dry ground and called it wisdom. The dog lifted her head. A chipped pink flower on her collar. Fear in her eyes, yes, but a decision too. She kept her body between the door and the current like a wall. Maggie. I didn't know her name yet, but that's who she was to me. My hands were already moving. Closet. Rope hard with old mud. My turnout coat, smoke deep in the seams. A plastic bucket from under the sink. Belt through the handle. Double half hitch. Test the pull. Good enough. Outside the air cut my teeth. I tied the rope to the porch post, wrapped the free end twice around my waist, and stepped off my porch into the flood. The water slapped. Then it was everywhere. My knees. My chest. It pulled like a live thing. I kept my eyes on Maggie. She watched me come, shivering but didn't growl. She just stood there, a trembling pillar. Easy, I said. My breath showed in quick white bursts. I'm here. The door bumped my hip. The puppies were silent. Small as loaves. Noses crusted with silt. I slid my hands under the first one, heat under wet fur, a weak blink, and lowered him into the bucket. The belt dragged at my waist under the new weight. Second puppy. Third. The fourth was pinned between splinters. I freed her, felt the tiny drum of her heart, and tucked her on top. I pulled the bucket close so they wouldn't spill. Maggie leaned into me then, just a fraction, like she'd been holding up the night alone and finally shared it. Her eyes were old honey. Come on, girl, I said. Let's finish this. The river moved first. A slab of broken fence shot out from the bend and hit my ribs. Light burst in my head. The rope burned my hip, snapped and went slack. Water took me. The bucket yanked hard. Puppies dipped, surfaced, dipped. I clawed at the door, found slick wood, lost it. Up was down. Iron filled my mouth. A bark strangled in the wind. My boy's hand was there in the water, the way I remember it. Open. Asking. My chest burned. My fingers hit metal. A hook. It tore skin and I held on. A cable hummed through the flood, alive and singing. Hold on. A girl's voice, high and fierce. A truck engine screamed from the hill. The cable went tight, slow at first, then sure. The bucket thumped my thigh. Something warm moved inside. Still here. Still trying. Maggie crashed into me on a wave, teeth buried in the door's edge. She didn't let go. Her eyes found mine for a heartbeat. Afraid. Stubborn. The hook bit deeper into my palm. The cable groaned. I wrapped it around my wrist and let it drag me. My feet scraped something solid. Sound returned all at once. People shouting. Boots in water. The girl's voice again, close now. Back it up. Slow. Hands grabbed my coat. Someone lifted the bucket like it held stars. The door scraped concrete. Maggie tumbled onto her side, coughed, then pushed up, eyes locked on the bucket. Always the bucket. I lay on wet grass and coughed until the world steadied. A thin girl with soaked braids and a red jacket stood by the winch, cheeks raw from the wind, hands white on the control. You okay? She asked, voice shaking, trying not to show it. I'm Hannah. That's my dad's truck. Thank you, I said. It came out as gravel. She pried the hook from my fist with careful fingers. Maggie pressed against me, heavy and shaking. She nosed my wrist, then checked the bucket. A weak chorus answered, small, stubborn cries. The sound put a light in the hollow place inside me. Hannah drove us to the shelter with the flashers on. I hugged the bucket tight. Maggie rode on the floorboard with her head on my knee, eyes never leaving her pups. The heater smelled like rubber. My clothes steamed. Inside, bleach, coffee, wet fur. A woman in scrubs met us with warm towels and few questions. We slid the puppies under a lamp. Tiny chests fluttered. They rubbed each one brisk and gentle, tucked them into a bin lined with blankets, heating pad glowing beneath. Maggie drank, then pressed her wet face into my palm. She curled beside my boot. Her fur was coarse with silt. When she exhaled it smelled like river and iron. My hand on her shoulder steadied us both. A tech looked up. Sir, why did you go in? The current. I looked at Maggie. At the pink flower. At the bin under red light. She stood in the cold water for hours to keep her puppies safe, I said. I just helped her finish what she started. They let me sleep in a chair beside her. The heat lamps hummed. The puppies breathed like embers. Hannah's father arrived before dawn, mud to his knees. He hugged her forehead to forehead. He squeezed my shoulder once, warm and solid. By morning, pumps throbbed across town. Bells tried for cheer and almost found it. When the pups were strong enough, we set the bin beside Maggie. The smallest found her first. The others followed like magnets no north. The room's sound softened. Oh. I told the intake lady I'd keep Maggie until the water went down. Just a few days. Just till she was steady. The words felt careful in my mouth, like stepping onto ice that might hold. At home, I lined a basket with old shirts. Maggie turned 3 circles and sighed like something inside me finally unknotted. The clock ticked. The radiator clicked. Her breathing filled the quiet. Days later, I walked her to the levee. I hadn't stood there in years. The river moved brown and sunlit, talking to itself. I thought of my boy. Not the last day, another one. Summer. Hot dogs on paper plates. His laugh with his whole body. The memory didn't crush me. It sat beside me. We watched the water together. Hannah came by with the bold pup and a bag of kibble. Dad said we could, she said, chin up. Good, I said. He looks like trouble. They named him Willow. Fit. The other pups found hands to hold them. People who had lost things wanted to keep something new alive. That felt right. Maggie stayed. She chose a spot under the window and claimed it. At night, the kind of quiet that used to scare me was just her steady breath. I didn't beat the river. I stopped letting it keep me. Sometimes courage is standing in cold water because someone smaller needs you to. Sometimes it's tying on a rope with old hands and taking one more step. Most days it's softer. A bowl on the floor. A slow walk where the light finds you. If you ever see a living thing refusing to let go, be the solid place. We keep each other. That's enough. A month later, I found the broken door snagged high in the willows. The wood was gray, soft at the edges, still holding river cold. I carried a plank home and set it on sawhorses. The garage smelled like oil and damp leaves. Maggie lay in the doorway, chin on paws, watching me like a promise. I sanded until the grain woke up. I cut a small tag, smooth as a river stone, drilled a hole. On one side I carved one word, stay. On the other just my boy's first name. The way I used to call him in for dinner. I rubbed oil into the wood. It took light like skin does. When I buckled the tag to Maggie's collar, it clicked against the chipped pink flower. She leaned into my leg and stood very still. We walked to the levee. The river talked low, steady. Grass stood again. Hannah came up the path with Willow, taller, muddy, proud. She handed me a thermos of cocoa. I gave her a thin sliver from the same wood, the same word. Stay. She nodded, quiet. We sat and listened. Wind in reeds. Water over stones. Tag clicking softly when Maggie breathed. We finished it, I told her. She pressed her head to my knee. We stayed.